Testing the sound. 1, 2, 3. Testing the sound. 1, 2, 3. Just testing the sound. 1, 2, 3. Just testing the sound. 1, 2, 3. 2 minutes, 2 minute warning. Hello and welcome to this Leverage WP workshop. I'm super happy to have you here, whether you're watching live or on the replay. This presentation is about how I cut my hosting bill by 70% on quite an expensive plan while boosting performance of my websites. I'll tell you that whole story. And the subtitle is, with managed hosts, you are paying for not performance, but you're paying for marketing and packaging. And those managed hosts are loading up customers onto servers that they actually rent from the same providers that you could rent directly from. And so let's get started. I'll just introduce myself real quick. Many of you know me through the Leverage WP community, the Leverage WP YouTube channel, and my Udemy course, which now has somewhere over 82,000 students learning WordPress and how it works for both hosting websites for clients and reselling hosting, as well as managing your own business and even creating your own website or managing it by looking at setting up your own hosting for your business. My aim in this workshop is just to inform you about a lot of facts that people don't know. Business owners, freelancers, agency owners, digital consultants. There's kind of a big black curtain between you and what managed WordPress hosting includes and is all about. So let's take a look at the hosting environment and the current state of hosting, and where with just a few hints I can give you a leg up on what you're able to get to either resell hosting for your clients or for supporting your own business. What I've been able to do is set up basically a set it and forget it kind of system where I have so many excellent automations in place and services that I leverage in order to have a website hosting system that is 100% uptime, never goes down, has plenty of backups in place, even a live backup system called failover that I'll explain later in the presentation. But let me share my screen and let's get started. Let me just choose the correct window. All right. And so when I was building my WordPress website design business, I would get new clients, and I was really happy that I was able to provide hosting for them, because as soon as I had just a few clients, they were paying for my own hosting. And I was really enamored with building websites in the 90s and the early 2000s. I started my website business in 1996, if you can believe it. Yes, there's some gray hair in my beard and my sideburns. But in any case, here 30 years later, I've really gone through some iterative changes, especially as regards how what I pay and how I host my websites and my client websites. I currently host between 50 and 100 client websites, and I do that as a solopreneur. I don't have to get in there and physically open and look at each website each day. That will be prohibitive. But I have systems in place that I'll show you right here exactly what I'm doing so that you can duplicate what I'm doing if you're selling websites and hosting to clients, which you should be doing. Or if you want to get the most bang for your buck as far as what you're doing in your business and supporting your websites and your systems. So in any case, I had built up my Udemy course to, tens of thousands of students, and I was bringing them over from Udemy into a sandbox environment that I created inside of WordPress. I was hosting this sandbox environment, and I would enable students, which some of you may be my students from the Udemy course. There's now the 2.0 version is out and much better. But I created these sandbox environments that would allow 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 different students to be interacting with them and creating their own WordPress websites on my own server, all at the same time. And so while I was hosting 3 or 4,000 websites, my hosting costs were going up and up and up. And my hosting provider was unable to actually have the backups of my multi-site installation complete. I was doing some troubleshooting, and this is how I got into looking at what the problem was. I mean, I was ready to take the advice of the support staff at my host, WP Engine, and saying that I really needed to upgrade the plan that I was on so that I could support all my students and my websites that were using up their resources. And now I really had no idea what resources I was actually using. When I looked into it, I was on a plan that was a half price plan to support my thousands of websites, and it was $600 a month. And that they gave me 2 months of $600 a month as an introductory cost to, migrate my website network over and to look at, and to be able to support it. $1,200 a month was going to be quite prohibitive. When I was, selling my Udemy course often at $20, $25, and I would make $5 or $10 per student. Really, that was cost prohibitive, and I needed to look around. So when I looked, I asked WP Engine support, what were the CPUs I was using? I really want to know the resources and the allocated resources on my server. What are my limits? The only limit they would tell me would be a traffic limit and a bandwidth limit. They could say, well, you can have 100,000 visits a month. And if you exceed that, then you'll either be charged for the extra traffic or you'll need to upgrade your plan. So I was being asked to upgrade not only to a $1,200 plan, but in order to get backups to complete and have, no server errors, I was going to have to upgrade to a plan that was over $2,000 a month. And I started looking around. They would not tell me or could not tell me in support how many CPUs the server had, what was the RAM memory, what the PHP workers situation was, which I didn't know anything about that at the time. So I didn't know anything about the resources I had at the server. In fact, later, I found out that I was sharing those resources with lots of other high-paying customers. And you really won't get them to tell you what the total resources of the server are. They don't want to reveal that to you for good reason. Their business is predicated on bringing people in and renting the servers from Google Cloud or from AWS, and then loading customers onto those servers where they're splitting resources between those customers. It's basically managed shared hosting. It's not dedicated. You don't get your dedicated server just for yourself. But what I discovered is that you can get that. So what happened to me and what happened to lots and lots of people, if you search with ChatGPT or search Reddit and ask about what was happening a few years ago as far as managed WordPress hosts, I would get on support talking about my backups wouldn't complete. I wanted to know how whether I could look at the server logs to see what errors were happening, maybe which plugin was using up all of my resources. And I found later that I wasn't even on support with system engineers. I was on support chat or support tickets with the sales department. Those individuals trying to help me, doing their best, were trained to try and upgrade people that were having resource limit issues. Instead of, trimming down their sites and troubleshooting and trying to help improve their websites in order to use the services that they were being charged for, the only option they gave me was to upgrade my server instead of optimizing my setup. And I don't mind that. Really, the concept of that is fine. If I'm using up all my resources, sure, I could go ahead and upgrade, and that would fix things, maybe, and temporarily. But I really wanted to optimize my setup. What really annoyed me was that I was on with a sales team, but they were purporting to be system engineers. They were telling me they were going to help optimize my setup with the plugins I was using, my WordPress installation, the PHP version, etc., and help me optimize my server, when in fact their only mission was to convince me to upgrade to a plan of twice the price. And so that's when I kind of started looking behind the curtain. I started to look at what the managed hosting companies were doing. I found, with lots of communication with others, forums, Reddit threads, this started to be talked about, I don't know, 10 years or so ago. Managed hosting companies do not own their own servers. Even the big ones, Pressable, Kinsta, WP Engine, Flywheel, all these big hosting companies that charge 200 to 600 to thousands of dollars a month are renting servers. They're renting really big, powerful servers that are expensive, but they're renting servers from Google Cloud, from AWS, Amazon Web Services, and other large infrastructure providers. And of course, they don't want you to tell you what they're paying for those services, because they're splitting those up and they're charging customers 5 to 10 times the cost. They're probably paying for one of those servers with 5 or 10 or 20 customers, or even less. They profit by limiting resources and charging more. You're paying for them to be able to package up the server that they bought into different virtual servers. There's systems called hyper threading, systems called VPS, or virtual private server, where they used software to split the server into separate sections so that they don't eat each other's resources. It's better than traditional shared hosting, but it's actually to their advantage. And really, they're kind of prohibited from sharing what's actually going on at the server. WP Engine and others hide the server logs from you. The resource limitations and the resource usage that you really want to know to be able to troubleshoot your websites and your website systems is hidden from you. It leads to unnecessary upgrades, right? The resource limitations are arbitrary. These are metrics that, if you want to look at, say, how many visitors I've used up out of my 100,000 a month that I'm allowed on my expensive server, how many have I used? Well, the only way you can find that out is by going into your server company's dashboard and looking at the metric that they tell you. And how are they measuring that traffic? Are they also counting bots, website search bots like the Google spiders and crawlers? Are they actually counting visits from bots that are hacking attempts? Probably. And so I really started to research how to go directly to the same infrastructure providers. And so let me stop sharing my screen and actually, I'm going to close my um, slideshow and go to a different place right here and share my screen again. And I want to show you around kind of what I found and what's available to you. So let's just take a look. Let's take a look right here at the GridPane managed server annual pricing. These are yearly costs, so you're paying what, 160 a month, but you've got to pay by the year to get a particular size server. And now some of GridPane's plans will allow you to get your own custom server and bring it, or as many servers as you like, to your own plan and use GridPane in order to access those servers. But let me just show you just a couple of differences here. I'm also going to flip over to a company provider called Hetzner. I use Hetzner. It's very similar to AWS or Google Cloud. They are a cloud hosting and servers provider. They're located all over the world. They have servers and data centers all over the world. But this is just an example of one of my projects inside Hetzner, my own personal servers that I use to host client sites. And I just want to show you, for an example, clients 3 here. If I open up this server, you can see that in order to get 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, 160 gigs of storage, and 3 terabytes of traffic in and out, these are my limits on the server. Now, they don't limit how many websites I can put on here, how much traffic I can get. That 3 terabytes is a huge amount of traffic. But for a 4 CPU and 8 gig of RAM server, I can fit 20 to 40, even 60 websites on a single server. And you can see right here the prices. These are in euros, but this is $15.99. That's under $20 a month to get this server. And if you go over here to my GridPane account on these sites, let me just look up client 3. Is that what it is? Nope, clients 3. Let me look up clients 3. The server we're looking at over here, the clients 3 server, is set up with GridPane with these websites. I don't know, about 20 websites. And if I look at the stats, the monitoring stats, I'm hardly using the power on this server. Let's go ahead and look at the server. Now, this server, which is maybe equivalent, maybe a little bit more powerful than this one, this gives you 8 workers. That's equivalent to a 4 CPU system with 4 gigabytes of RAM, half the gigabytes of RAM, which is one of the limiting factors for how many sites that you can host on a single server. A little bit less space and the same amount of bandwidth. They're charging you with all these features, that come with my GridPane account and yours. If you go right here with this, that server right here costs about $20 a month. But they need to charge you $160 a month or $2,000 for the year in order for you to get that. And they're forcing you into this server. If you want to add extra servers, of course, you'll have to pay them for that. The big difference here is that I want to be able to pay a flat fee for my access. For example, right here inside of GridPane, I pay a flat fee for this access. And now I can spin up any number of servers. These are all individual servers. Each of these client servers, like I said, has 20 or 30 websites on it. If we look at client 3 and look at the monitoring stats, let me just verify. High level of security inside of GridPane, which is excellent. Same level as your banking application or something like that. In any case, this is just the monitoring service on this server. You can see that the load is at 0.08, 0.15, 0.16. On the CPUs I'm using 3.3% of the total power with all 20 of those websites. I'm up around 30% of the RAM memory. Now that's where the databases from all 20 of those sites come into play. They eat up a little bit of RAM memory. Remember, I've got 8 gigs of RAM here. It's twice what that other plan has over here for $2,000 a year. But if I look at the monitoring, the other metric we can look at is CPU and memory. And then storage, what am I looking at? 46%. So a little less than half of my total storage on this server. So I feel I can fit another 10 websites easily, or I can just leave this server here, costing me about $20 a month. I can leave lots of overhead so that the extra, any one of my sites that eats up a little bit of space or a little bit of CPU, if they get busy, I'll know about it. And I've got so much room on the server, plenty of overhead there in order to function. And so I just wanted to tell you the difference there. Now, this is, GridPane is way more transparent than, other managed WordPress hosts like WP Engine, Kinsta, Flywheel, Pressable. They won't give you these stats. They won't tell you what your server is actually doing. And you also have direct SSH or shell access to the server here as well. And I can choose inside my GridPane account to use any number of server providers. This is one of those discontinued custom enterprise accounts within GridPane. And don't worry, you can have access to this sort of thing as well. And I'm also going to give you, if you're not ready to pay more than $100 a month in your business for hosting, if you're in the smaller field, that's fine too. You can use a lot of the information in this workshop here. If you click plans, you could see they start with a free plan. You can get free access to GridPane with a little bit of limitations. You can host 25 websites. You're forced to use one provider, Vulture, but they are a good provider. But you can bring your own server from Vulture and pay for it directly. Or you can pay $19 a month for a very small Vulture server and you pay that directly to GridPane. And that might be a good place. One of these are a good place to start if you need to pay less than $100 a month for your business. But I'll tell you, if I'm at more of this level here with my custom and more, when I charge clients for hosting their websites, I charge them a minimum of $100 a month. So it takes me just a few clients to pay for it. It really only takes me 2 clients to pay for about this level of hosting. And like I said, I have about 50 to 100 clients, all on these servers and inside of my sites in the GridPane. You're not limited if you've got one of these unlimited plans. And so as these pop up, what do I have on each page here? Let's see. Oh, I've got pages here that I can't see down here. So I'm looking at 50 a page and I have 3 pages of websites. So let's see, I'm going to just pull up a site that I use for playing, and this is where I'll show you around just a little bit. But that's just a little bit of a tour. Like I said, from Hetzner, you can get a server for 20 to less, 50, 20, even $15 a month, and you can host a large business website, an LMS learning website, a WooCommerce e-commerce site. Dynamic websites need bigger servers. And when you have control, like I didn't have control back when I had the big network and the thousands of sites on it, I had no idea what I was, paying for there. And so I went on that research project, like I said. And so let me go back to the slideshow here and let's get into how you can leverage this information and a little bit more detail about, how all this works. And so if I go to the next page, let me share my screen once again. Sorry for that delay. I pivoted to direct cloud servers, right? I switched from my WP Engine plan before it jumped to $1,200 a month, which I wasn't going to be able to afford in my business at that time. I got way better performance on my GridPane server for less than $200. What I did was I went and I was like, you know what, thousands of sites. I'm not going to take any risks. I am going to buy a dedicated, what they call bare metal, a bare metal server. We're talking about instead of 8 gigs of RAM, I got one with 64 gigs of RAM, a single server, terabytes of storage space. And I got it with 16 CPUs instead of 4 or 2. Minimum 2 is probably what you want to do if you're going to host a number of sites on GridPane. But I got a server, a gaming server with super strong and fast CPUs, lots of them, lots of RAM memory, 64 gigabytes of RAM memory, and 2 terabytes of storage so that I could host my networks. What happened was my total cost went down to less than $200 a month, and everything worked. My thousands and thousands of sites all performing super fast. It allowed me full control over the hosting environment. I could look at that monitoring screen, or even go into the server itself and get real-time reports about which of my sites on there are using the most CPU, for example, or which of the sites, or even which of the plugins that I have are using more RAM memory. There's ways to find that information quite easily, that hidden information that other server providers don't want to tell you. So the resource usage is fully transparent. There's no mystery fees, no unsupported upgrade recommendations. Now, I was interested in support. I was coming originally from shared website hosts. I went from Media Temple to SiteGround to Rackspace before I went to managed WordPress hosting at Flywheel and ultimately WP Engine. But all along the way, support was important to me. And it is to this day still. If you'll see me offer for you to look at Leverage WP hosting near the end of this workshop. And not only does it include support from me, who knows how to work with WordPress and looks at your particular use case and needs and recommends server size and power for you, but I also can reach one level higher upstream to really experienced system engineers that have way more experience working on servers than I do up at GridPane. And I always needed to make sure I could have instant support if I need it. I hardly need it anymore. I go months or even years without using support because of all of these automated systems that take care of everything in the background for me. And I'll show you how I set all that up, because you can too. But I get enterprise level security, caching, and backups, among many other things that give me lots of benefits and the ability to set up all these automated systems so that I can run a business with 50, 100, I was looking even 150 sites, I guess, up to now, where they don't need me to touch them hardly at all. I do monitoring every minute. I get an instant notification if any of these sites have an issue or go down. And I'll also tell you about the failover system that I use that no other hosting company is providing, short of Kinsta. Kinsta has a failover program, very expensive. But failover, I'll explain that in a few minutes. But let me just make this point before I go to the next slide. None of these security systems, caching systems for delivering websites fast from CDNs and from cached pages that don't have to hit the database or the server, and backups. Backups should also be done upstream from your actual website. Now, when I say upstream, let me just explain a little bit about how servers work. There's you've got a server. It's a computer sitting in a data center with a liquid cooled floor, and backups for their electric systems. And that website sits on the server, and it's full of some files, and it has a database also on that server. And of course, all the different files have different types. There's image files like JPEG. There's website files like HTML, PHP, etc. And there's database files like .SQL files. And WordPress websites interact with all those things. Well, when you go to your browser and you type in an address, it goes first to a domain name system called the DNS system that translates your domain name into a number. That points to your website server. And then the website server sends out the stuff to your browser. And now your browser is upstream. Your browser sends a request to that server. And now, before that request hits your server and uses up some of your resources, it is important, and it's really a best practice in that you check for security. you block any, malicious bots or any hacking attempts first before it hits your server. If you need to, you can deliver that web page to them without even using the server resources by caching it, by saving a copy of that page at a different server or even on your server in the form of a static item. And then also backups. The backups that you have should not only be, on your server, but also away from your server on a different data center, but they should be redundant. They should be, if there's a backup there, backups, security, caching, all of these should be managed at the server level, upstream from your website. However, on hosts that don't include all these services at the server level, many website owners are forced to do backups, for example, using a backup plugin in WordPress. Well, every time you save a backup of your website, it's a complete copy of it. You first have to use the website's resources, the server resources, I should say, to make the backup. And then if you save that backup on your server, you're taking up double the space, right? And so you should have multiple redundant backups, and more than one of those should be on a different server, saved outside your server in case you have a catastrophic crash. The same is true for security. There's security plugins and caching plugins that you can use inside of WordPress, but those are using up your server resources in order to perform those services for you. And so GridPane and other direct cloud server control panels and software stacks provide this sort of thing. Security at the server level, caching at the server level, and I'll show you even at the DNS level, and backups outside of your server. And so how do you build your managed system? You choose an at-cost cloud server provider. Maybe you choose Hetzner at $20 a month or so. You configure the performance and the redundancy features. Now, if you were to go into Hetzner and spin up that server and start paying your $20 a month, it's up to you to install WordPress, to install a software stack, and to configure that software stack to be able to work for you. I'm going to share my screen again, so I'm here in the background, turning off the slideshow. And I just want to show about how you can configure performance and redundancy features here inside of GridPane, especially inside of leveraged WP hosting. I call it a set it and forget it managed hosting service, or I might even start calling it an open managed hosting service, because there are no limitations. It's completely transparent. You pay the server company directly at cost, and you just pay a flat fee to leverage WP for support for the software stack, to access to enterprise grade GridPane software stack and control panel. So it's full transparency and better performance, tuned to your needs. And so if I tune your system for your website or your websites as you want to bring in client sites to resell them, or maybe your business website needs specific needs like software for membership login or e-commerce, something like that, or even email marketing within WordPress using your own server and leveraging an email system like Amazon Simple Email Service. I take care of all that for my clients and configure it all. But if I were to look at back to Hetzner right here, let's see. Let me go back to, here's my servers, and let me add a server and just show you how you can configure it. Maybe I'll first choose a location for that server, maybe closest to my customer base, at least in that part of the world. And then you're allowed to put any of these software images, depending on what you want to do, on your server. Now, WordPress and GridPane works on a Linux distribution called Ubuntu. This is open source software, and the GridPane software stack, which is really best in class, lives on Ubuntu. And so you choose the latest version of Ubuntu. I'll talk about, I can recommend whether you need a dedicated virtual CPU or shared virtual CPU, depending on your needs when I consult with you about the kinds of things you want. For reselling servers and for static websites, I'll use shared virtual CPU because it's cheaper. But if you need really powerful CPU power for, say, a membership site, or if customers are logging in, like for an e-commerce site or a learning management system, then that would be, what you might choose. And so let's take a look at some of the pricing here. This CPX31 is what I use for those client sites. I like to keep them, to a particular size. I'd rather use 3 and have the sites spread among them rather than have one big one, just in case anything were to go wrong. Now, GridPane makes it easy to clone sites over to different servers, even in different providers, different parts of the world. And so that makes it really easy. And so you can manage a lot of different servers very, very easily, like you saw inside of my GridPane control panel. So here's the CPX31. Now you can go up, if needed. But if you go to dedicated CPUs, here you've got a little bit more power, like 8 with 32 of RAM. That's going to cost you, more like $70 a month or something like that. But these are the things you have to set up. And then we just leave everything except for backups as the default. Now, here is a 20% charge on top of, what did I say? This CPX 31 costs 16 euros. That's cost about $20 or $18, $19 a month. It goes up to about 24 when you add backups. But here's one of the backup systems. If I check this box, Hetzner will save me a backup of the entire server. I'm talking about all 20 or 30 or 50 websites you have on that server, able to be restored with one click in case something goes wrong on the server. Always recommended. That's one of my offsite redundant backups measures. And then you come down here, you can name it, and then you just create it. Let's see, what did I have? Oh, that's because I had a different one selected. Dink. So if I look at with the backups selected here, I'm looking at 19 euros. Actually, not 20. Well, yeah, about 24 bucks. 24 bucks a month for a super fast server that can host a huge e-commerce store, a popular membership or community site, or 20 to 50 regular WordPress websites for clients or for your own projects. Let's take a look at one of the sites at GridPane, like I mentioned. If I click into this greg.com sample site, it's on my clients too. It's just where I play with some different technologies at times. Let's look at backups. So I am showing you local backups. So here is a backup of the site that gets saved to the same server where my site is hosted. So if I had this all by itself, I might be a little scared. What if the server went down? Not only does the website go down, then the backup goes down too, if it's on the same server. Many hosts only provide you with this type of setup. But anyway, I like to do hourly backups at 23 after the hour, easily restorable. I just click this restore tab and choose the one that I want. And in a click, in a couple of minutes, it restores it for me. But not only that, I have remote backups enabled here. I'm using a service that's super, super cheap called Backblaze. I have it connected to my GridPane account inside of here, and I'll save daily backups here off-site. Now, this is where I have not only redundant backups, but I have off-site redundant backups. So I can restore a single site from an external backup. Like if I needed to restore it, I can restore from the original source, whether it be local or whether it be the Backblaze backup right here. I can just click the blue button to restore it. And so there's 2 backups right there. But remember, I've got a third server-wide backup over here happening at Hetzner. So that's 3 backups. And I like to be thorough. I'm a rock climber, and when I build anchors, I like to be redundant so that if anything fails, I've got 2 or 3 more options holding me that each can hold me up. So I like to think about that as far as my backups for client sites and the way I set up configurations for my hosting clients. Here is a backups plugin inside of WordPress. So this is the greg.com address. This is where we were managing inside of GridPane. But here's the site. I'm using a plugin called Updraft Plus. Great plugin. but it does use my WordPress resources. But hey, I've got a huge server that's cheap. I can upgrade if I need to, but inside of my website here, I've got this on a schedule. You can see I've got existing backups I can restore from. I've got 2 available here. And what's this? That a logo right here, that's the Dropbox logo. These backups are being saved weekly externally to my Dropbox account. So these backups, even though they're using a little bit of server resources to create, they're uploading automatically to my Dropbox account, and they're not taking up the storage space on my server. And you can also retain however many. This is a free plugin. So I always set this up for clients. This enables you to provide backups that go to your client's place of data sharing and saving. They could save it to their Google Drive or their Microsoft OneDrive or any of these. It could even get emailed a link to the backup and then download it. If you noticed right here under the backup restore, under these existing backups, these are buttons to download. So these are files that are just installable anywhere. If I have the database, the plugins, themes, and uploads and other files, then I can go ahead and install this anywhere I want, even from this backup. Even if I lose all the access to these backups and these backups. And so redundant backups, it's awesome. And so, also within here, I've got server-side caching, a beautiful page caching and object caching system. I don't have it turned on this site because this is just my play site. I just like to use it under development, but all my other client sites and websites that I own have page caching and object caching, really strong. Security, these firewalls you can turn on to stop malicious bots or DDoS attacks, hacking attempts before they even hit your server. They can, GridPane has stuff on the server that blocks them before they use any resources. So your website doesn't use any extra. I get notifications about vulnerabilities, advanced notice when vulnerabilities or malware vulnerabilities are noticed within themes or plugins. I get a notification right here, and I can go in there and fix that instantly. Fortress is like banking strength security for login security and managing the sessions as far as using security within each of the WordPress websites. It's way better than any security plugin. And again, it's upstream. The PHP versions and everything, this gets a little bit into the weeds. I'm not going to teach you this stuff right now, but I can choose some different options for how I use the CPU strength on the server. PHP workers are what these are called. And, the other managed hosts don't let you adjust how you use the PHP workers available to you and how many you let, use at the same time, etc. This is configurable, and I consult with all of my clients and configure it for their use case, and then the last thing in here, you can clone the site on the same server and make a copy. You can clone it to a different URL. You can clone it over an existing site, and you can choose whether you want to put it on any other server. This is how you can manage to upgrade your server. Say I wanted to, double the size of this server as I'm growing. I just get a new one, connect it to GridPane as a second server, and then I would say, I just want to clone this one over to this other server right here. And if I click this, I'll have a copy of that site on the other server. And then I could just point the IP address from the domain name. And I've got a brand new site at a different server. You can even clone entire servers at GridPane. So I could take and get a new server, and then I could just clone all the websites on an entire server straight over to the new server, test them all out, and then take them live. It's really pretty amazing. So let me go back to the slideshow here. And like I said, I build managed systems for all of my websites in this way. And just real quick, I've told you all about kind of what I've done over the years to build this hosting. Leverage WP Hosting competed or participated in the Review Signal independent, load testing and ranking website. It's at wphostingbenchmarks.com. And you can find Leverage WP Hosting competed in the 101 to 200 a month tier. I was competing with those managed hosts like WP Engine, like Kinsta, and Pressable. And Leverage WP matches or beats the providers, charging 2 to 5 times more. It's not a risk, but an upgrade to use an award-winning host like mine. Let me show you real quick. If you go to wphostingbenchmarks.com, you could see that the last test was 2023. There's another one coming up. But if you look at the participating hosting companies under the $101 to $200 competition, I'm competing against Pressable, the SiteGround managed hosting plans, plans that are $100 to $200 a month. I'm getting a gold star. So if you look at the results, you can compare results right here. Let me go back. And so let's see, if you click Leverage WP, you can see that I got a gold star here, and some of the specific load tests and where Leverage WP came in. I was using a server just like the one that I'm showing you here to compete with other server to companies that they're charging a whole lot more. So high in the performance test. This is just a lot of detail, but I got the top tier rating for Leverage WP hosting. So I'm really proud of that. That's just something that really supports what I'm trying to do is remain transparent, help my clients to make more. If you're paying, over $100 a month for hosting, especially 2 to 3, I could probably half your hosting cost and give you better performance and give you better support. I'll directly look at what your business needs and give you custom configuration suggestions. And so you can do this too. This is the last slide. This is for business owners, not just tech people. If you're, like I said, $200-300 a month, $1,000, stop wasting thousands. You could save if you went from, say, a $400 to $150 a month charge for your business, for your hosting systems. You're saving thousands per year, 15,000 a year, something like that. So start off with room to grow without headaches. Like I did, I'd recommend going with a server that's large to start loading sites onto, or to support your dynamic website business. Something that has the room to grow without headaches. But even if you didn't, you could grow easily by setting up new servers and shutting off the old ones. Servers you set up are charged hourly, not monthly, with these providers. And so you really can spin one up. You can spend, a couple of cents, under $1, to have it for days, to migrate everything, and then just turn off the old one. Super simple and reliable. So switch to a more powerful and cost-effective system. You can take back control. You can also have support. You can leave it to me and Leverage WP to manage your hosting and website performance. Therefore, you can focus on your own business. So the last thing, I'd love to talk to you about how I might be able to help. Or you can even go straight to GridPane. You can get a free GridPane account and spin up a cheap Vultr server just to test some of this stuff out. Their free plan doesn't have all the features, like failover. I'll just describe, failover is where you have a second server, like a big dedicated server that keeps a synchronized copy of your website between your website and the other one. And the instant your website has any issue, before traffic even gets to it, traffic gets sent to the second website. And that is failover, which is included in all Leverage WP plans at a certain tier or higher. And if you have any interest in talking about it, maybe getting a recommendation, or at least getting my comments on what you should do to start or to change what's happening in your business, feel free to reply to any of my emails. Use this email address. I'm Greg with 3 Gs at leveragewp.com, or you can visit leveragewp.com, and you can find me there. And so I really appreciate you tuning in to this live stream. Let me go back over and finish just to show you leveragewp.com. Here it is. Well, here's my website on the contact page. If you go to Leverage WP homepage, you can see a little bit about the hosting. There's a little quiz that asks you a few questions about maybe the type of hosting you might need. You can join the Leverage WP community at $300 a year to get support from me directly on an ongoing basis, and even get a single website to play with there. But if you click contact, you can get in touch with me with this contact form. Or here's a little bit of contact info over here. And so let me stop sharing. This wraps up the workshop for today. I appreciate you guys being here. I really hope you'll reach out by replying to any of my emails or by sending me an email at greg@leveragewp.com. And I'd love to work with you. Or if you just want some advice on how to get started more cheaply, if you're under $100 a month, if you want to pay, I don't know, $24 a month on a Vultr server and be able to host a few websites on it and get started that way, I can easily help you. So I'd love to help you out. I hope your day goes great, and I'll see you next time. See you next week for another video. All right, next time.